So because news has been flying so fast, you may have missed an event in November that in retrospect may turn out to be of truly historic importance. A presidential election was held in a European Union country. The two establishment parties lost to two outsider parties, and the Supreme Court simply annulled the election. And there was no allegation that there were any problems with the voting or the vote counting. So we have a new story up at Dropsite by Alexander Zajic that takes a deep dive into what happened. It's a wild story and worth a full read. But the short version is that on November 24th, Romanian voters delivered an unexpected victory to a right-wing populist named Călin Gheorghiu, and in the opening round of the country's presidential election. So always considered a long shot, Gheorghiu had been polling in the single digits just weeks before surging to claim first place with 23% of the vote moving on to the runoff. The result shocked Romania's two dominant parties, who found themselves on the sidelines as Gheorghiu campaigned for the runoff against another anti-establishment candidate who came in second place, Elena Lasconi of the reformist Save Romania party. Now, 5 days later, a news outlet called Context elevated claims that the election had been swung by the Kremlin through a social media campaign. On November 29th, the outlet published a report that included a summary of an analysis it conducted using software from a Ukrainian firm that for the last several years had NATO and EU and others as clients. Now, for the past several years, Context has participated in a region-wide NGO project to investigate the, quote, pro-Kremlin conspiracy and alt-right disinformation ecosystem in Central and Eastern Europe, unquote. The participating groups often have similar funding streams and various Western institutional connections. In the case of Context, its budget is overwhelmingly covered by funding from the State Department-funded National Endowment for Democracy and the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, a global reporting network that we recently reported over at Dropsite is heavily funded by the U.S. government. So Context's executive director spent 20 years working in the press office of the U.S. Embassy in Bucharest. Now, on December 4th, 4 days before the deciding round was supposed to take place, Romania's Supreme Defense Council released a small batch of heavily redacted documents from the country's Foreign Intelligence Service. The documents outlined allegations of a Kremlin-backed social media campaign that supported Gheorghiu in violation of national election laws. Quote, data were obtained, the accompanying government statement read, quote, revealing an aggressive promotion campaign that exploited the algorithms of some social media platforms to increase the popularity of Călin Gheorghiu at an accelerated pace, unquote. Within hours, the U.S. State Department expressed its, quote, concern over the allegations. 2 days later, on December 6th, Romania's Constitutional Court unanimously ruled the November 24th vote was invalid. Quote, the entire electoral process for electing the president of Romania is annulled, the court announced, citing government claims of irregularities on social media. Now, a week and a half ago, the court finally announced a new date of May 4th for a new election. Radio Free Europe and Radio Free Europe/Radio Liberty, which is funded by the U.S., reported Romania had become the latest victim of a, quote, aggressive hybrid war waged by the Kremlin. 4 U.S. senators issued a statement condemning, quote, Vladimir Putin's manipulation of Chinese Communist Party-controlled TikTok to undermine Romania's democratic process. So it wasn't just Russia, now it's Russia and China. The State Department, though, seemed fine with the election cancellation, saying in a statement, quote, we note the Romanian Constitutional Court's decision today, unquote, and expressed, quote, confidence in Romania's democratic institutions and processes, including investigations into foreign malign influence. Okay, so that's the case they laid out. The whodunit is so fun, and I don't even want to spoil it for readers, but I'm going to because this is a newscast. I'm going to tell you how this ended. It was not the Kremlin. It was not Chairman Xi. What happened was the PNL, which is one of the establishment parties, did that thing where you go and support a fringe candidate to try to draw votes away from your opponent. both major parties in the US do this. The Democrats love to boost libertarians.
Little Reid Hoffman
in
action.
Senate seats. Reid Hoffman likes to do it. And Republicans are the most aggressive advocates for Green Party ballot access all the time. So what happened here, imagine the scenario, is that basically both the Democrats and the Republicans lost, and the Greens and the Libertarians went to the second round, accidentally boosted by these moronic establishment parties. So that's what happened. So the funding for this TikTok campaign came from one of the major establishment parties. And what's wild, and Alex goes into this in the article, is that when they originally put out that batch of documents showing that this whole thing happened, the name of the consulting firm that had run this entire operation was redacted. So in other words, Romania knew the name. And not only did Romania know it, the US knew it. The name of the consulting firm that ran it was redacted. We now know the identity of that consulting firm, and it is a consulting firm that works almost only with this one establishment Romanian party. So from the very beginning, and also Alex talks about how they'd seen this consulting firm, people had seen them going in and out of the offices. Like it was, everybody knows that this consulting firm only works with this party. Like that, it's like that. We have the same thing here in the United States. You got firms that work with Republicans, firms that work with Democrats.
Yeah.
So once they identified, this social media campaign is being run by this consulting firm, they immediately knew that it was one of these parties, that it was this particular party that had funded this operation. Yet instead they redacted it and claimed that it was Russia, knowing full well that it was not. This was not a mistake where they're like, oh, boy, sure has all the hallmarks, as the 50 intelligence.
The 51, yeah.
All the hallmarks of a Russian counter-intel operation. Wasn't even that. They knew with certainty, for a fact, who ran this thing, and the State Department publicly supported the annulment of this election. Anyway, the key point here, why they care so much about Romania, you used to think that Germany had the most important European American military base. Not anymore. Romania now is host to the most important American military base in Europe. And a right-wing populist who has said that the war between Ukraine and Russia ought to end is a direct threat to American military interests vis-a-vis that base. And so here we are.
The other part of the story, first, as I was reading this reporting, I was like, it needs like a flow chart, because the other one is relying on the assessment that it was Russia from a firm that does most of its work with NATO, right?
Right.
Like
They used this Ukrainian AI software company. They claim that, and this is the U.S.-funded news outlet, relying on a Ukrainian NATO-funded analytics firm that's using some AI that says, yep, we have concluded. So think about this. Back up for a second. Like the U.S. and the Romanian establishment parties are accusing Russia of interfering in Romanian politics. Who is leading the charge in making that accusation? A U.S.-funded news outlet relying on a NATO-funded Ukrainian software company, claiming that there is foreign interference.
Yeah.
It's like, guys,
blaming Russia.
That's kind of foreign interference. Like
it's foreign interference.
Like you're actually doing the thing that you're accusing Russia of doing.
Yes. And it's getting like no coverage in American media because it's like, Romania, whatever.
And I think it should, because it's the cancellation of an election.
A NATO country.
When you don't have any evidence of voter fraud or anything, like no allegations that the vote was tainted. Like the people went out and voted for these two characters.
There's zero evidence that votes were tampered with.
And it doesn't mean I like this Gorgesco guy. He's like a right-wing creep. But come on, like the guy won. If
votes are not tampered with, like if you cannot prove that votes are tampered with, and you're just mad that someone came in and put up a bunch of, let's just say, billboards, whether they're digital billboards, physical billboards, digital flyers, or literal flyers, and you say that it was foreign interference.
But it was actually Romanians.
But it's like saying that we have to cancel out, but let's say hypothetically that it was Russia. And it was like Russia's little Facebook campaign in the closing days of 2016 election to divide Americans along the BLM lines and the LGBT lines. So those ads are still like very funny if you go read the Senate report from 2018 when they found the memes that Russia was posting. Let's just say that's what happened hypothetically. Like, do I think that we should be transparent about if foreign powers are funding propaganda? Absolutely. Do I think there should be rules about what money you're allowed to take in elections from foreign powers? Absolutely. But people are making up their minds. Like you're still fundamentally getting mad with voters. It's fundamentally about voters.
It does raise a thorny question because there are also sovereignty questions. So I think there's a threshold issue. Like if Russian TikTok thing, let's say it was Russia and it's a little TikTok thing, it's like, get out of here. Like it's not persuasive enough that you've swung the entire election. But let's say Russia came in and like ostentatiously spent $1 billion supporting the candidate that they liked in complete contravention of Romanian law. I can see a case where you're like, no, you can't do that. Like we are like, what does Trump say? Like we have borders. You know, you're not a country.
Right.
You know, borders, and you're not a country if you can't pass some laws and have them respected.
Totally.
But I understand how that can be a slippery slope to exactly what just happened.
Yes.
So, but you know, this is tricky stuff to think through. However, none of that even happened here. This was a Romanian establishment party.
It's this
that screwed itself accidentally and then used its own screwing to annul the election.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we're in the vibe shift moment now, but this is what you're going to see attacking the populist left and populist right long term as a major theme. It's going to be technocratic elites using the powers of, or abusing, exploiting the powers of technology, which completely shrinks the globe, to undermine people. So saying that we couldn't control TikTok. We couldn't control the messaging on TikTok. So elections canceled, like, sorry, because everything is now so consolidated and centralized that you can look at a campaign, an alleged campaign on social media and say that it totally upended the election and validated the election. And you can do that from your perch in the technocracy. So this is a taste of what's to come, but it's a significant taste of what's to come because it screwed up the Romanian election, NATO country, EU country, and we were involved, shamefully involved.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.